Welcome to Our Halfling. We talk about Lord of the Rings and a little bit about D&D, so let's get to it. Today we are going over Chapter 9 of The Flight of the Nolodor. So our last chapter ended with Ungoliant killing the trees of Valinor and sucking them dry, and all the wells that Varda had imbued the light of the trees in, all of those have been sucked dry, and Melkor and Ungoliant have escaped, and the Valinor and everyone is just lost in darkness. So this chapter begins with Yavanna grieving the lights. She's mourning over the loss of the trees. And she tells the Valar, like, hey, Feanor made the Silmarils with the light of the trees, the foresight he had. This is perfect. We can just take the Silmarils and regain our light. Everything will be fine. And Manwë said, tells Feanor, like, hey, what do you say? Will you give us the Silmarils? Will you help us out? And Tolkien, with no patience at all, goes to Feanor and says, like, hey, the work that you've done, the Silmarils, they come from the light of the trees that Yavanna had made. Recognize where the glory comes from in your Silmarils, in your creation. And Aule kind of shows compassion for Feanor and says, like, hey, guys, chill. Just take a minute. You're asking him to do a really big deal. Like, this isn't just a simple thing that you're asking him to do. Like, give him a second. And Feanor cries bitterly. And Feanor says, like, hey, the Silmarils that I've made, they come from my heart. They're part of me. If I give them over to you to be broken, I will be dying. It's like killing me. And I would be the first Eldar to be slain in Aman. To which Mondo says, not the first. But at this point, nobody knows what he's talking about, what that means. So they continue on. And at this point, Feanor is now thinking to himself, like, oh man, what Melkor said is true. It's happening. The Valar want my Silmarils. They want my creation. And I don't trust Melkor, and he's a Valar, ergo, I can't trust the Valar. Like, this is his whole thought process. So he tells the Valar, like, if you want them, you're going to have to tie me down and take them by force. I'm not going to give them to you freely. And Mondos just says, okay, he's spoken. That's his choice. So Nienna gets up and she goes to Azalohar and she begins to cry and grieve over the trees, and her tears wash away all the defilement that Ungoliant has created. And she cries over again the marring of Arda that Melkor has created. But even as Nienna is crying, a messenger comes from Formenos and says that in the darkness, Fenway must have escaped back to Formenos and was slain, and the Silmarils are gone. To this, Feanor rises up and cries out and curses Melkor at this moment and renames him Morgoth, the black foe of the world. And from now on, the Eldar will always know him as Morgoth. So Feanor is now in rage. And it says that no other son loved his father as much as Feanor loved Fenway. So now it says that, Feanor isn't the only one that has lost something in this moment, that Yavanna weeps over the mound, and the Valar at this point don't fully understand what all is going on. They know that Melkor must have had help in what has happened. If things would have been different, maybe, if Feanor had agreed to give the Silmarils to Yavanna, even though he couldn't have, obviously, they were already taken at that point, but maybe his choices would have been differently if he had agreed to give them over to Yavanna. So at this point, the chapter cuts over to what's going on with Morgoth. And at this point, Morgoth and Ungoliant have escaped from Valar, and they go it says northward between the mountains of the Pelori and the Great Sea, as Avathar lay to the south. But Araman was a wider land, and between the shores and the mountains were barren plains, ever colder as the ice drew nearer. So they're getting closer to the Helcaraxe. They make their way across. They get to the other side. Morgoth at this point is trying to get to Angband, get to the ruins of Angband, and that's where his stronghold was, and so that's where he's going. He's trying to get, basically at this point, he's trying to get away from Ungoliant as well. And Ungoliant recognizes this. It says that she perceives his hope, and so demands the fulfillment of his promise. And she says, hey, I did what you asked me to do, and I'm still hungry. And Morgoth's like, well, what else are you wanting? You know, I've given you everything that you've asked for. You've gotten the trees, you've gotten the wells. You know, I did my part. Like, I don't know what else you're asking. And Goliath says, no. I know you got something at Formanos, and I want it. And you said that you would give to me with both hands. And so Morgoth goes, okay. And he pulls out some jewels from his left hand, gives them to Ungoliant, and Ungoliant goes, no. That's not what I'm wanting, and you know it. You give to me with one hand, but I want what's in your right hand, and in the right hand are the Silmarils. And so Morgoth goes, no, I'm not going to give these to you. I'm lord of the land. These are mine, and you can't have them. So at this point, Ungoliant gets very angry and attacks Morgoth. And it says that he sets forth a terrible cry that echoed in the mountains, and in this region is called Lameth, for the echoes of his voice dwelt there ever after, so that any who cried aloud in that land awoke them. So he lets out this huge cry, which the Balrogs that were lurking in the ruins of Angband hear this, and they come out to go and basically rescue Melkor. And it takes more than one Balrog to get Ungoliant off of him and to get her away. And so she flees, she leaves, and it basically says that she goes to Ered Gorgrath in the Dark Valley that was after called Nan Dungortheb, the Valley of Dreadful Death. And this is where she lived and bred, and that she basically bred with other spiders and created other supernatural spiders, one of which would have been Shelob. And in here is where she departed, and there are no tales of what exactly happened to Ungoliant, but the Eldar believe that she basically starved and devoured herself, and that's how she died. And so now Yavanna's fear of the Silmarils being devoured is not going to happen, so that's good. However, the power of Morgoth still remains. And it says that him being freed, he's able to gather again all of his servants, and they can all come back to the ruins of Angband, and they can start growing again. And it says that he delved anew his vast vaults and dungeons, and above their gates he reared the threefold peaks of Thangrodrim, and a great reek of dark smoke was ever wreathed about them. And so here we have lots of demons and beasts, and he's just accumulating his army again. And he creates a crown of iron, and he puts the Silmarils in it, and he now wears this crown. It says that he never takes it off, and that because the Silmarils were holy gems, that they burned his hand, and so his hand evermore remained black and was painful, which just made him angry, and that the crown holding the Silmarils grew heavier and heavier on his head, but he never took it off. And so the anger of the pain of the Silmarils just makes him angrier. It just worsens everything. So for now, he continues to grow his army, and his hatred, it says his hatred just devours him, and in the domination of his servants and the inspiring of them with lust of evil, he spent his spirit. Nonetheless, his majesty as one of the Valar long remained, though he turned to terror. So now that the Valar know that Morgoth has escaped and Finwë has been slain, and the Silmarils have been taken, the Valar remain in the Ring of Doom and now are just mourning over everything that has happened. And at this point, Feanor goes to Tirion, goes to the Summit of Tuna, and here he is starting to create his rebellion against the Valar. And so the Nolodor gather, and all of them with torches in hand, and through the fire of their torches lights up Feanor, and he gives them this masterful speech of how they need to avenge Finwë, how they need to go after Melkor, they need to leave Valinor, that the Valar have just entrapped them in this little island when really they have this vast land that they should be living on, and that the Valar are just keeping them here because the men are to come, and that the men are going to rule Middle Earth unless the Eldar get over there. And so he's basically sharing with them all the lies that Melkor had told him. And a lot of the Noldor, this is the first time that they're hearing about men. And so they're all kind of concerned about what's going on. And a lot of them want to honor Feanor because he was the heir of Finwë. And so they see him as the heir of the Noldor. And so, yeah, there's this alliance there, and they want to follow Feanor. If he tells them to go do something, they want to honor that and follow him. So Feanor says, "Fair shall the end be, though long and hard shall be the road. Say farewell to bondage, but say farewell also to ease. Say farewell to the weak, say farewell to treasures. More still shall we make, journey light, but bring with you your swords. For we will go forth further than Arome, endure longer than Tolkis. We will never turn back from pursuit. After Morgoth to the ends of the earth. War shall he have, and hatred undying. But when we have conquered and have regained the Silmarils, then we, and we alone, shall be lords of the unsullied light, and masters of the bliss and beauty of Arda. No other race shall oust us." So now Feanor has made this awful oath, and his 7 sons leap up and take the same vow together. It says that they hold up their swords, and in the light of the fire, their swords are red as blood. And so now they've sworn this oath that cannot be broken, and that basically their oath has binded their fates together. And so basically they're all deciding that the Silmaril belongs to them, and they're going to go and retrieve the Silmarils from whoever or whatever may have them. So at this point, Fingolfin and his son are now speaking against Feanor, saying like, nope, this is a bad idea. These are really fierce and harsh words. And they all understand that like this oath that they've made, it cannot be broken. Like it will be kept till the end of the world. And so Fingolfin and his son Turgon recognize this, and they're like, guys, y'all need to take a chill pill. At this point, their other brother Finarfin steps in and a much softer, calmer demeanor tries to persuade the Noldor to stay, to take a minute, think about what they're talking about, what they're doing. And it says that Ordreth was his only son that spoke in this manner, and that basically they're all just wanting everybody to take a minute and breathe for a second. Don't make any rash statements that you're going to regret later. And it says that a few of the Noldor kind of agree, but that Galadriel was one of the women that stood tall and was like, nope, I want to fight. She wants to do this. She's eager to get out of here. Although she never swore an oath, she did agree with what Feanor was saying. And it says that it kind of like lit a fire in her. There were a few that didn't agree with Feanor, but they kept their mouths shut and didn't say much. But after a while of of debate, Feanor prevailed, and a great part of the Nolodor go with him. It does say that Finarfin spoke up and was like, hey, it's like, quit it, let's take a second. But that a vast majority said, no, let's go. And Feanor and his sons didn't even like take a minute at all. They just left and started packing and got ready for their march. It says that there was little foresight from this point on, like they didn't really know what they were getting themselves into. And Feanor drove them forward. And that although Feanor didn't, like, he recognized the power that the Valar had if they wanted to stop him, none of the Valar said anything. And so a great many of the Nolodor gathered together and they're ready to take this march. It does say that a few refused to leave and that they loved the Valar too much and they were going to stay. But most of the Nolodor end up leaving. And as they leave, a messenger finally comes from Manwë and saying, against the folly of Feanor shall be set my counsel only. Go not forth, for the hour is evil, and your road leads to sorrow that you do not foresee. No aid will the Valar lend you in the quest, but neither will they hinder you, for this you shall know. And as ye came hither freely, freely shall ye depart. But thou, Feanor, Finwë's son, by thine own oath art exiled. The lies of Melkor thou shalt unlearn in bitterness. Vala he is, thou sayest, then thou hast sworn in vain, for none of the Valar canst thou overcome now or ever within the halls of Ea, not through Eru, whom thou namest, had made thee thrice greater than thou art. So basically, like, if y'all leave, this is going to end really poorly for y'all. Feanor, you can never come back. You're exiled. And because of the oath that you made, there's no way that you can defeat Melkor. Even though you've made this oath that you're going to, you cannot do it. It will end in with your death. It doesn't matter. It's not how this works. But Feanor, it says that he laughs. And he doesn't care. And he says, okay, so then will this valiant people send forth the heir of their king alone into banishment with his sons only and return to their bondage? But if any will come with me, I say to them, is sorrow foreboded to you? But in Aman we have seen it. And Aman we have come through bliss to woe. The other now we will try through sorrow to find joy or freedom at the least. So yeah, and the herald goes and says, he turns to the herald and says, go tell Manwë Sulimo, High King of Arda, if Feanor cannot overthrow Morgoth, at least he delays not to assail him, and sits not idle in grief. And yeah, so he's basically going off saying like, hey, even if I can't succeed, at least I'm going to go do it because you're not doing anything, which, valid. He has a point there. So in that hour, the voice of Feanor grew so great and potent. And it says that the herald of the Valar bowed to him and was like, okay. And so now the house of Feanor gets up and they head out. And that this group does not turn back. They don't look back. They don't care. They're on their way. It says that the group that goes with Fingolfin, they leave after them and they're a little slower. They do look back. They're kind of questioning, like, should they be doing this? Should they not? The last group was Finarfin and Finrod. And it says that these were the noblest and the wisest of the Noldor. And they were really reluctant to go. And that eventually they get so far that they can't even see the light of the lamp from Mindon Eldaliva. So they're following Feanor. Feanor starts leading the group to Alqualande, and he recognizes that if he wants to get to Middle Earth, he's going to have a ship, and the only people with the ships are the Teleri. So he goes to Alqualande to talk to Olwe and to try to convince him to let them have these ships. And so he gets there and always like, dude, like I can't do that. I can't, like, you're asking me to do something really difficult. Like, in the same way that it was hard for you to give up the Silmarils, it's hard for us to give up the ships. And to this, Feanor is like, well, when you guys got here, we helped you with everything. If it weren't for us, you'd still be in huts on the beach. So you should help us out. And to this, Olwe was like, true. Like, yes, you did help us. But this is different. These are things that we made. Like, our sons and our fathers and our brothers made the timber. We cut the timber. We got the timber ready. And our daughters and sisters, they sewed the sails. Like, these ships are a part of us. They have us in it, and we in them. We can't just hand these over to you. So Feanor is now getting really peeved, and always telling him, like, just calm down, just take a minute. You need to go back to Valimar. You need to go talk to Manwë. You need to go and hash this out with him, basically. And so it says that Feanor takes the night. He leaves, takes the night, and like thinks over everything that's happened. And in the moment of thinking, he's like, we're going to take the ships by force. So Feanor's group, because they're the only ones here at this point, he's left so quickly that the other two groups aren't there yet. And so Feanor's group goes to steal the ships. They're going to take them by force. So they get there. There are artillery there. I guess they were kind of on guard anyways. Didn't know what Feanor was going to be up to. So there's artillery already there. And Feanor gets there. And they start fighting. They start attacking. They want these ships by force. And it says that the Teleri kind of have the upper hand at this point. They're pushing the Nolodor into the water. They're in control right now. Like, they're not going to take these ships. And it says that the Teleri only have simple bows. So they don't have like great weapons, but they are in control right now. But then comes Fingolfin, his group, and all they see is fighting, and they have no context of why they're fighting. They just see that they're fighting, and they're like, oh, we have to go and fight with Feanor. And so they join in the fight. And in this, the Nolodor get the upper hand, and they gain control of the ships. And through all of this fighting, the Teleri are crying out to Ulmo and Osei and Unanen to help them. But Manwë has already given strict orders that the Valar are not to interfere in anything that's happening. That, again, if the Eldar want to leave, they can leave just as freely as they came. And so they are not allowed to interfere in anything that's happening. So because the Noldor are now gaining the upper hand, we have the kinslaying of the Teleri. And so you have a lot of Teleri dying, obviously. And because of this, Unanen is mourning and grieving over the loss. And her grieving is so great that it causes a huge storm. And in the storm, a lot of the ships get destroyed and a lot of the Noldor drown. So now we are left with just a few ships that the Noldor have taken. And it says that a few travel by land, a few travel by the ships, and they go north. And in going north, they see a being in the distance. And they're not really sure if it's Mondos or a herald of Manwë. But they hear this great voice speak out to them a curse and a prophecy, which is called the prophecy of the North and the doom of the Noldor. And this being says, tears unnumbered ye shall shed, and the Valar will fence Valinor against you, and shut you out, so that not even the echo of your lamentation shall pass over the mountains. On the house of Feanor the wrath of the Valar lieth from the west unto the uttermost east, and upon all that will follow them it shall be laid also. Their oath shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasures that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn that they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin, and the fear of treason shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they be forever. Ye have spilled the blood of your kindred unrighteously, and have stained the land of Ammon. For blood ye shall render blood, and beyond Ammon ye shall dwell in death's shadow. For though Eru appointed to you to die not in Ea, and no sickness may assail you, yet slain ye may be, and slain ye shall be, by weapon and by torment, and by grief, and your houseless spirits shall come then to Mandos. There long shall ye abide, and yearn for your bodies, and find little pity, though all whom ye have slain should entreat for you. And those that endure in Middle Earth and come not to Mandos shall grow weary of the world, as with a great burden, and shall wane, and become as shadows of regret before the younger race that cometh after. The Valar have spoken. So to this, a lot of the Noldor were kind of panicking a little bit. Feanor, his heart hardened though, and he basically says that I've sworn an oath and I'm not taking it lightly, and I'm sticking to it, and that basically he's not going to be threatened by what the Valar are saying, and says, therefore I say that we will go on, and this doom I add, the deeds that we shall do shall be the matter of song unto the last days of Arda. But at this point, Finarfin's group are like, nope, I ain't doing this. This is too much. I'm turning back. And so their group, they retrace their steps and they go back. They are grieving over what has happened with all of the Teleri and Aqualande. They don't like what's happening. They don't like all of this. And so they choose to retrace their steps and go back to Valinor. And when they get there, it says that they receive pardon from the Valar, and that Finarfin becomes the king of the Noldor in the Blessed Realm. But that his sons are not with him. That, if you remember way back when we were talking about the sons and the princes of Eldali, that Finarfin's sons were extremely close with Fingolfin's sons, and they were like brothers. So his sons don't return back with him. They stay with Fingolfin. And Fingolfin's group stays with him. They continue to follow him, and therefore continue to follow Feanor. So now they get to the Helcaraxe, and they see the grinding ice, and there's a big debate now on what to do next. And Feanor is seeing that he's losing control of the Noldor. That pretty much every step of the way he's starting to lose more and more followers, more and more people who don't want to follow him, don't agree with what he's doing. And he's kind of panicking a little bit right now and what to do to kind of keep control. And so while everybody's debating on what to do next, Feanor decides in the middle of the night he's going to steal the ships. So all those following Feanor go onto the ships. They cross the sea. They get to Middle Earth. And here his eldest son, Madros, says, hey, like, how many people do you want to send back to go and get the rest of the group? And to this, Feanor says, no one. I'm not going to send anybody. We're going to burn the ships. And Madros is like, no. So he stands aside. Feanor burns the ships. In the distance, Fingolfin can now see the red glow of the ships that Feanor has burned and realizes the betrayal, and is now filled with bitterness. And Fingolfin takes his group and chooses to cross the Helcaraxe, which no one has done this. The only people that have crossed the Helcaraxe are the Valar and Ungoliant, and that's it. So for the Eldar to cross is kind of a big deal. And they cross. Some do end up dying in this crossing, including Elenwe, the wife of Turgon, Finrod, and Galadriel make it across, of course. But yeah, a lot die in the crossing of the Helcaraxe, but they make it to Middle Earth. And they don't have a ton of love for Feanor and his sons at this point, but they've made it across. And says they blew their trumpets at the first rising of the moon. So that's how this chapter ends. a lot happened in this chapter, and I don't want to get into too much of my thoughts because I have a lot of thoughts on Feanor, and I want to finish the next couple of chapters of his story, and then I'm going to do a video on just talking about Feanor because I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of strong thoughts and opinions about him. So I'm going to do that separately. Yeah. But I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Thanks for sticking along this long. I'll see you guys next week. May the hair on your toes never fall out. Bye.